Well, good Monday morning to everybody. Thank you so much for joining us today. We're going to have a conversation with DECA's Peer Support Specialists, and I'm going to turn it over to Ashley Countryman to get us started.
Hello, everyone. I'm so glad that you could meet us here today. This will be kind of an informal talk. I have some questions prepared for the panelists, but also feel free to type in questions in the chat. If you have a question that I haven't covered, I would like to take a minute to introduce Chasity and Jill and Karma, all who work here in Lawrence as peer mentors or peer specialists. If you want to take a minute and introduce yourselves and who you are and where you work and how long you've been around.
I'm Chasity. I am at a Lawrence outpatient, and I have been here for 2 years.
I'm Karma. I'm at First Step at Lakeview in Lawrence, and I've been here for 2 years, 2 months, 3 days, and 20 seconds. No, I'm just kidding.
Hi, I'm Jill. I work at First Step at Lakeview in the evenings and also at Heartland in the afternoons, Heartland Community Health Center. Oh, and I've been here for 2 years. Sorry.
So what is a peer mentor? What is it to you?
To me, it's giving support to those in early recovery, middle recovery, whatever, giving them support so they can be successful and achieve long-term recovery.
Yeah, I find it's helpful that I can relate to them on the level where they're at, and it makes people open up and more likely to listen to what I have to say about how this process works.
Yeah, and I agree. I think we're all in recovery, so we're able to, as Jill said, meet them where they're at and really establish a level of trust with them that they may not get from a medical professional. So
what are the requirements to be a peer mentor?
Well, the requirements are that you have to have at least 2 years of sobriety, that you have to be certified by the state of Kansas, be sober. Yeah, that's helpful. Did I miss anything else, Chasity? Jill?
No?
So yeah, lived experience, have a demonstrated recovery.
Mm-hmm.
So what is I'm going to say this, a peer mentor, isn't it? I'm trying to get that out. Like sometimes people confuse it with all sorts of different positions. What is it not?
Well, for starters, we're not therapists. We're not sponsors.
Not a case manager.
There you go. Not a lawyer. We can't give you legal advice.
We're not doctors. Yeah.
All right.
So sometimes I've heard it be described as a peer mentor as someone who helps the person achieve the goals on their treatment plan. So would you find that to be true?
Well, I think, it really depends, Ashley, and I think that's a really good question because each of us work in different facilities. So for me, I work pretty closely with the counselors at First Step at Lakeview to provide them with referrals per their counselors. So if they do have those needs on their treatment plan, that they can be met by the RADAC caseworker and or the counselor. So that's my role.
Okay.
I have some of that with some of my clients, but I'm also on the behavioral health court and drug court team. So when working with clients with them, they may have things that they need help to achieve, such as getting their driver's license or finding out what fines they owe or finding recovery meetings in the community. So it could be, several different things.
Well, So speaking of what Karma said, that you all work in different locations, tell me specifically kind of what you do at your different locations and how that looks different in what you do as a peer.
Well, like at Heartland, I don't have, I mean, there are behavioral health counselors, but there aren't specific substance abuse counselors who work off of a treatment plan. So I don't usually have those goals set out for me, which makes it a little bit different. A lot of the time when I'm talking to patients there, we're trying to figure out what their goals are and then figure out what steps they need to take to reach those. I'd say that's how it's different, although I wish I had a treatment plan to work with.
Thank you. Chasity or Karma?
Carmen, go ahead.
Oh, I was just waiting for you, but don't mind if I So, wow. So I think I wear just kind of a lot of different hats at First Step, and I think that that's just par for the course in terms of working in a residential treatment center. But as a peer mentor, so I have virtual classes online for patients that are outpatient that have been at First Step. That meet me once a week virtually, which is really cool. I think it's very helpful, especially during these times where it's very stressful for our clients. So they can we can all touch base and be real, about our struggles in early recovery. And then also I teach several classes here. I do referrals. I'm here for the clients. So whether that can be anywhere, anything from, needing clothes or personal hygiene products to providing referrals, as I mentioned before, help with 12-step meetings when they graduate from First Step at Lakeview, help with sponsorship. That's part of what I do also.
So mine's a little different in the sense that I meet a lot of clients out in the community. There are days where I spend my whole day out in the community. I'm not even in the office. I go to court with clients. I go to corrections office. I have a relationship with some of the corrections officers when it comes to our clients. For me too, it's helping them find sponsorship. That's a big thing. Recovery meetings. I do 2 peer support groups per week virtually. I also meet clients virtually. But I would say about 85% of my clients now I'm back to meeting in person, which is really cool. And then again, I have the behavioral health court and drug court, and we do those virtually currently as well.
So similar work, but done way differently. So how are peer mentors and having peer mentors as part of the clinical team really important?
Well, I would say that one of the things that I really love about my job at First Step is the relationships that I have with the counselors here, because I think, as many of you know, when you're new in recovery, you're just kind of really desperate to get back what you've lost, like yesterday. So a lot of times the clients aren't necessarily present mentally when they're here because they're so focused on getting their housing back or their children back. So it's really helpful for me to talk with the counselors about each of those folks so I don't overextend, because I've had a tendency to do that just in the, trying to be helpful, but that can not be so helpful. So if I know exactly where they're at on their treatment plan, then we can do what's best for the client, and I really, really like that.
I found that people are more willing to open up to me often than even their counselors and things. They will tell me things that they don't necessarily tell the doctors and the counselors. And I see a big part of my job is just fact finding like that for the other professionals, and then letting them know through notes and things what really is going on with that particular patient.
I too like the relationship that I can build with the clients. I've had a few clients that asked to work with me versus their therapist. I know from me being, when I was in early recovery, if I'd have had that one person with support that had been through what I had been through, it might have made things a little easier. But I think just building that relationship with them, because, you know, I can say, I get it, I was there, is, you know, helps them get back into a trusting relationship, you know, and be able to build new relationships with other people.
And just see that there's a way out, that it is possible.
Exactly.
Providing hope.
That's right. That's
Absolutely.
exactly right. Yeah.
Which brings me to my next question, to share a little bit about your journey, how you came to be a peer mentor. I know each of you had a different journey, so.
Well, mine was because I participated, well, I wouldn't say participated, but I came to our recovery day in September for 2 years. And the second day that I was there, I was asked to share my story, and I did. And Miss Ashley came to me and asked me if I'd be interested in peer mentoring. And I was like, what is that? And then I, you know, stayed with her working on it and went through it. And I'm super grateful. I wouldn't change anything about what I'm doing.
Yeah, so I was in corporate for 20 years and I was really, really unhappy. I made good money, but I just felt like so empty in my soul. Like I had no purpose. I worked with numbers all day and I'm terrible at working with numbers. And so my sponsor had been kind of pushing me to go to First Step, like, you really need to work there. I think that'd be a great place for you to work. And I was like, no, I don't want to do that. And then one day I found the job for peer support and I applied, and so I'm with Chasity. Like, I'm so grateful that I did that. And I know I say this like over and over and over, but the thing that I love about my job the most is that it's never the same, which it's never the same, which for somebody like me, that's a really good thing, you know? And I can be helpful in ways that I could never imagine being helpful before. So, and being open about who I am. That's what's so weird in a good way. Like where I used to work, I couldn't really talk about that. Here, we talk about our recovery all the time and it helps people. It's just so cool.
And it helps us too, I think.
Yeah, it helps us a lot. Yeah.
How about you, Jill?
I just was lucky enough to happen upon an ad for this job when I was about a little over 2 years sober. And I remember when I had gone through, I went to Vallejo when I went to treatment, and I had, of course, like most people, had thought, oh, I want to be a counselor, or I want to be a tech, or something like that. So when I was looking for a second job, I thought, there's a place in town. Maybe I should see what's going on there. And sure enough, they were hiring. So that was wonderful. And along with Chasity and Karma, I love my job. It's like the first job I've ever had where I really liked it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and prior to this, when I was drinking, I bounced around in all kinds of little jobs. And before that, I was an attorney for about 5 years until my drinking got in the way of that. But yeah, I wouldn't want to go back to that. I love this. This is what I want to do.
One thing I've heard probably all of you say in one way or the other is just how you're able to be authentic and it aligns with your values. Does anyone want to touch on that? Your authenticity. I think you did, Karma, talking about you can just be yourself.
Yeah, I was just thinking, and I shared this with Ashley before, but so the clients that we serve here, in my addiction, I didn't go to jail. I was just lucky. That's it. I was just luck. But, our clients here, a lot of our clients their circumstances have been different than mine, but on the inside, we're exactly the same. And so what I love is being in class with these folks and they're like, you do that too? Like they're just shocked that you did that. And forming that relationship, I think, is so important because then, like Jill was saying, we can provide some hope. And they can say, if you can do it, maybe I can do it too. And so, yeah.
And like mine, you know, like you said, you hadn't been to jail or, you know, anything of that sort. And mine's completely opposite. You know, I've been to jail, I've been to prison, I was a convicted felon. Since then, I got my felony expunged. You know, I'm able, you know, to show people that, look, you could be a peer mentor too. And I've had some people that want to do it, and showing them that, you know, I still have the same struggles as you do, but they're somewhat different now with the amount of clean time that I have. And, you know, I just have a lot of people that I can relate when I'm talking to them, whether they're doing assessment and they bring up something, you know, hey, I was doing this. And I was like, hey, me too. You know, it breaks that judgment barrier and that, that stigma. That's how I look at it.
Yeah, and there's so much shame, I think, with addiction that comes in guilt, and it's so it really helps our clients to be real about that. I shared exactly the same feelings, and we found a solution to that, and here's what that is. And so you can have that freedom too, you know?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And yeah, and I found it, I mean, I do love being able to be honest about who I am when I work. And it has helped me, like being able to be honest around First Step. It helps me at Heartland, where it isn't all addicts. For the most part, the people who work there are straight-laced. I mean, they've done the right things. And so I think it helps me to be honest with them and to help them to see that these people that they're helping are just normal people. And I don't know, I find that that's a little bit different than working in the treatment facilities.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, you're at Heartland, you're working with doctors and nurses and who maybe didn't even understand what a peer mentor might be, or, you know, or how to utilize one within that practice. And it's just another set of eyes to say, hey, wait a minute, that, you know, they're just early in their struggles, where here I am 2 years, 3 years, 4 years, 20 years later, and I can be a beacon of hope. So I know that you all in Douglas County, we have something called the Douglas County Detox Project, and you have all been involved in that. Would someone like to explain that work?
So, so the Douglas County Social Detox Program is a program that was started about 2.5 years ago. Does that sound about right, Ashley? And so what it is that it was, there was a need in the community for peer support. And the way that looked is that before us, somebody who, you know, was coming off, had a significant alcohol withdrawal, opiate withdrawal, they'd go to the emergency room, they'd stay there for a while, they'd get stabilized, and they would leave, and then they would come back, and they would continue coming back. And as a result of that, there were a lot of frustrated doctors and nurses because they couldn't understand, really. So what happened is that Douglas County, with county dollars, came up with this Douglas County Peer Support Program. The way that it works is that Chasity and Jill and I, is that we receive a call from the hospital, and that individual who is the client talks to our folks at First Step. They do a screening, they have to meet certain criteria to qualify. And if they do qualify, then we send out a peer support to the hospital. And that is really where kind of the magic starts, right? If they're not too sick, but because sometimes they're really sick. But so we go there and we can talk to them about our experience, our recovery, how we can help them. And then we can also utilize that time to see what they want. Do they want detox? Do they want treatment? And incidentally, we provide that transportation free of charge. If they're a Douglas County resident and they meet other criteria too. So we take them to detox, they're there for 3 to 5 days. We pick them up and take them back home, take them back to treatment. We do whatever it is that we can to be helpful.
And one of the things that we try to build on is when you say you go to the emergency room or the emergency department, that's where you're meeting people. And what talk to me about windshield time. Anyone?
Windshield time, you referring to that as the driving
Yeah.
part of it? So sometimes for me, it can be a little interesting. But most of the time it gives me that time to connect more with the client outside of the hospital scene and the tubes and the blood pressure and the nurses coming in and out and all that. It gives a little more time to be, to build that relationship more. For me personally, when I'm going into the ER, I share a little bit about myself, but mainly let's get all this done, get you placed. And then once we get in the car, then we have more time to, you know, build that trust and that relationship. Now I have had a few that I've had to take long distance that would share a little too personally with me. But other than that, I don't think I've had any clients that have made me feel uncomfortable or anything of that sort. But you know, and it's helping advocate for them, you know, making sure that they have what they need and that they're safe.
Absolutely. Someone in the panel, also feel free to ask questions in the panel or in the chat. I'm open to all questions. Someone asked about, is this only in Douglas County? And so for that, I would say this particular project, which is through Douglas County and like behavioral health initiatives, this project is in Douglas County, but we take people for social detox in other counties. So we take them to adult detox unit, which is in Johnson County. We take them to Vallejo, which is, I don't know what county, Wichita. So yeah, but the originating client must be a Douglas County resident for this particular project. So I have another question from the panel here. What's the most rewarding part and the toughest part of the work you do? Great questions.
I think the rewarding part for me is having someone that comes in that's gets set up with me and they're in early recovery and they're struggling to stay clean. They're, you know, they don't have any support. I get them introduced to the meetings and, you know, making new associations. And then they work on their treatment plan. They work on the things they need to do. And then they come to that point where they have been clean all this time and they discharge.
Mm-hmm.
And then I may see them later or I may hear from them later. Another thing for me is when I've seen clients graduate behavioral health court. I'm not going to lie, the very first time I saw somebody graduate and have their charges dismissed, I cried. I'm an emotional person in recovery. It's like a sap. But just seeing the growth in them is so rewarding. Now the tough part for me is I have to learn how to not keep going. If I have a client that's struggling and they're struggling at some point, I have to learn to, you know, step back because they either want to do this or they don't. But it saddens me, you know, to see that they have all the help and the opportunity and they just can't get out of their active addiction.
I would say that the most rewarding thing for me, and there's a million and one things, but the one thing I'm thinking about was we had a client from Heartland that I picked up over a year ago that when I got there, she threw just an enormous fit, didn't want to talk to me, slammed the door, left. I never thought I'd see her again. And I did see her again and got her hooked up with a sponsor. She started going to meetings and she just celebrated a year of sobriety. She is going back to school. She's got a car. I mean, those are the kind of moments that I absolutely live for. It was so wonderful. And the saddest part for me is when clients die, because that is just a fact of our disease. And it happens, and that makes me very, very sad. But I do know that if I'm doing the best job that I can to be the best peer support that I can, you know, I have no regrets, no regrets. And, but it really is like, this is serious stuff, you know, so yeah.
How about you, Jill?
Yeah, I mean, I would say it's along the same lines. I mean, the toughest part is when you see somebody who's so close to getting it and then they just disappear, or something happens that just puts them back down to where they were. It's hard to watch. It's hard to let them go and let them follow their own path. But yeah, the great part is when people get it and you can see it, you can see them change, and it's wonderful. It's wonderful to see them out in the community and they see you and they're so excited because they know they look good and they know that they're doing well and they're proud, and that's good.
Yeah, definitely. Another question we have in the panel is, does working with individuals in recovery help your own recovery, and how so?
For me, absolutely, it does. And I think the way that it helps me is it reminds me on a daily basis of where I was at one point, where I am now, and how I got there, how I got here. So I definitely think it helps me in that sense. It also helps me when I'm talking to clients and, you know, help them get into the community, our recovery community. Well, in return, it takes me into the recovery community. And I just have to say this pandemic has been good for my recovery personally, because I can attend meetings all the time now. But when everything goes back to normal, then I have to learn to put effort in, you know, going to meetings. So they help me a lot, and it helps my recovery.
Yeah, I agree with you, Chastity. It really helps me also. It's like, I mean, you want to talk about like, I just lost my train of thought. Isn't that embarrassing?
Gratitude.
Oh, I know what I was saying, but I was trying to think of the word that I was going to use. Like, it really helps put things into perspective for me, especially when I'm at the emergency room with someone who, you know, has lost everything and continues to think that they can do it, that they've got control. I mean, I've had clients that have been like, I got it this time. I really got it this time. And it really makes me understand that my problems are high-class problems compared to people that I normally meet at the emergency room. For me, it's not a substitute for my recovery, and I'm very aware of that. I still do what I have to do for my sobriety. I still go to my meetings. I do all that stuff, but it really gives me this newfound perspective that I wasn't expecting at all, and I'm so grateful for.
Yeah, and it helps keep you focused on what's really important.
Yeah.
You know, it's,
For
you
sure.
know, for me anyways, always remind you that things could be and have been so much worse.
Mm-hmm.
Well, and that's what I was going to point out is like they can help your recovery, I think, by reflecting back to where you may have been, but it's not your recovery, right? Like you still have to have your own recovery as far as like the things that you do to keep yourself healthy and so on. One of the things that I think one of the misconceptions, and I think I had this maybe early on too, that like when you see someone who is at the ED and has just drank, you know, whatever they drank, but that you're automatically triggered, and that's not something to look out for. However, I've always heard from you guys is that usually that's just how much gratitude you have for your own recovery, and thank God that that's not you right now or where you've been, or it takes you back to where you've come from, I guess. Is that accurate?
Yes.
Yeah, it's not triggering for me at all because it shows like the worst part of the addiction, the awful part.
So I have a couple more questions here. How do you get past the feeling of hypocritical or unworthy of our role while working with families when we go through our own struggles? So I think I understand what they're asking is like, if you as a peer mentor or as a therapist, everyone that's human has their own stuff, right, that they're going to be working on. So do you ever feel hypocritical if you have your own stuff that you're working on, but you're also trying to help someone in early recovery? I think that's what she's asking.
I say it doesn't usually bother me. Like, I'm aware that I'm a human being and I'm going to have troubles. And, you know, sometimes I draw on that for work, but mostly I know how to draw that line between what is my trouble, you know, and that's separate from what they should be doing. I mean, not should be doing, but you know what I mean.
Yeah. Is that the power of being a peer or a power of being a therapist, is that we continually to work on ourselves as we do this work so that we can sustain ourselves in this work? So talk to me about what does your recovery look like, and how do you continue to feed and grow your own recovery while being a person who works in recovery?
So for me, I've been very vigilant with the fact that our meetings here in Lawrence, you know, there are going to be clients that are in there, regardless if they're at First Step and I don't know them, or if they're here, you know, from Lawrence Outpatient, or that I've met in the hospital. So I've learned that I can still share in meetings, but I need to be careful of what I share, you know, to protect myself. I go to out-of-town meetings, and then recently I've been going to Texas meetings online. That's kind of cool, because I still have to protect myself and my recovery, and it helps me in that sense because I have to work harder. But if it came down to me having to go to out-of-town meetings constantly versus here to protect my recovery and have recovery, then that's what I'm willing to do. Because I have to do whatever I have to do for my recovery.
So one thing I hear is that you go to meetings. That's you could. How many years out of First Step are you?
I am October 20th. No, I'm sorry. In December, it'll be 6 years.
So you're
Since I was
6
at
years
First
out of
Step.
First Step, and you still go to meetings.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Do you have a
I
sponsor?
have a sponsor. Yes, I have a sponsor. I've worked to the steps once. I'm working on going through them a second time, because my recovery doesn't stop. That's never going to stop.
So you actively work it every day.
Absolutely.
How about you guys, Carmen and Joe?
Yeah, I keep doing the same things that you did before, you know, just make sure that doesn't change. It's not, I mean, the job is not a substitute for all those things that were keeping me healthy before.
Yeah, I just have to agree with that. Like I have a sponsor that some people would probably say is a hard-nosed sponsor, but I need somebody like that because I don't like to work at anything, much less my sobriety. So, so what I do is exactly what I did when I first started in this program, and I go to meetings. I haven't been to an in-person meeting since March, and so, you know, I miss that a lot. But I do all my meetings virtually with my home group. I talk to my sponsor on a regular basis. I sponsor women, a woman, I guess. Do everything that I do and more. I have to do more because I'm really like, my disease is never, I'm not cured, I guess is what I'm trying to say.
And how many years out of treatment are you?
October 7th, it'll be 23 years.
23
Yeah.
years, and you're still going
23 years, yeah, it's crazy.
You have a sponsor?
Same one, same sponsor that I had when I first got sober. So I'm really grateful for that.
Yeah. I guess what I'm trying to emphasize is that it never stops. You don't leave treatment and you're done.
No,
I mean, that's just the beginning, right?
that's exactly right. Yeah, and there's, you know, and there's different kinds of recovery, and we talk about that, and I can respect that. But for somebody like me, I can't just not drink or use drugs. It has to be more than that if I'm going to be comfortable in this world. So, and useful. And I have a great life as a result of that. So.
How about you, Joe?
As far as continuing with the recovery, yeah, like I said, do the same things we did before, meetings, make sure in the morning, the first thing I do is I read my grapevine quote, and I make sure that I start my day off with the thought in mind that recovery is my most important thing.
And without your recovery, would you be where you are today?
You.
Yeah, right?
Absolutely not.
Oh.
You know, there's a saying that like whatever you put before your recovery is the first thing you lose. Do you want to expand on what that means to people who might not know what that means?
Well, I mean, from my personal experience and also the women that are here at First Step. So the first thing, I kind of love this, but one of the things that I first heard about in recovery is the first thing that you get back when you get sober is your opinion, which I love that so much because that is me. Like, oh, I'm 30 days sober, I got it. I don't need any help from anybody. I'm fine, because I have a lot of ideas about everything. And it turns out that my ideas don't work, but it takes me a long time to kind of learn that, to do it somebody else's way. So, so one of the things that I really recognize is that I get sober, women get sober, and they want everything back right away. They want the kids, they want the job, they want the relationship. And I think as we are, at least for me, I want instant results right now, which is why alcohol and drugs worked so well. For me, it was just instant gratification on a level beyond, and then some, but that's another meeting. Anyway, but I can talk to the women here about that and say, hey, guess what I did? You know, guess what I did when I because I've done this. I put a relationship first when I got sober, and I almost went out and drank. I got crazy. So maybe you could learn from that and try to do things different, you know, and that is so hard. That's so hard to just say, oh, I'm just going to do meetings and focus on my recovery. Well, that sounds pretty boring, and it is boring for a little while, but I was miserable enough to do it. Thank God. So yeah.
How about you, Jess or Joe?
So for me, I mean, I agree. You know, I did put a relationship before my recovery. And I had my aha moment, you know, of, you know what, I will lose everything. Number one, I go back out, you know, I lose my job. I lose everything I've worked so hard for. And I tell myself personally, and this is just what works for me, is that if I go back out, I won't come back. To me, that's simple. It's cutthroat. That's it. But when I start putting other things before my recovery, I don't put that effort in. I can see where the chaos is in my life, and I just start to, I'll notice that I'm starting to be very irritable. But I agree with Karma, and I talk to clients about this, and I tell them constantly that, you know, early recovery, it's hard. It's boring to some because we're used to all that hustle and bustle and going and stuff. Mm-hmm. And it can be lonely, you know, and those were the two things that when I left treatment that I had to stay focused on was loneliness and boredom, because those were the two things that would take me back out. So when I'm working with clients early recovery, I make sure that I'm like, this is why we introduce you to this, because it can be boring. It can be lonely. And so, yeah, I just feel like if I was to use it, I'll lose everything. I don't know that I'll lose it in steps. I'll lose everything.
Mm-hmm.
How about you, Jill?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, if you don't put your recovery first, I mean, everything else will disappear. And that's clients have a hard time with that, but that's one of the mantras I just keep reminding them is you just got to not use, you got to not drink and just keep putting one foot in front of the other until it becomes a habit to not do that anymore. And then other things fall into place, like they really will. And I think the fact that we've been there before and they see that things fell into place for us, that gives us some credibility when we say, for real, if you just don't drink, just don't use, things will work out. Like you just got to trust it.
So that's the hope and the power of a peer, right?
Yeah, trusting that I love what Jill said, like trusting the process. I try to tell, like, just trust and just hang on. That's all you have to do. Just hang on for a while. And because that's really what early sobriety is about. So it's just kind of white knuckling it for a little while. And then you get a little bit more comfortable. So yeah.
I use that saying a lot of trusting the process and not fighting the process.
Yes.
Fight the process, you're making it harder on yourself.
That's right.
And you're not going to be able to accept it. And open-mindedness is another one that I use, you know, because I have people that like, well, I got to go to treatment or, you know, go into detox. Go in open-minded. If you go in closed-minded, you're not going to get it. You're not going to accept the help that's being given to you.
That's right.
So I'm out of my list of questions. I think I have one question left. So if panelists have any questions, please. Oh, I do have a question here. How would you suggest those of us with clients who are currently struggling with addiction connect with them when we may not have a lived experience such as addiction? I usually feel like I'm not able to give advice because I never experienced what the client has experienced.
So Lisa, I can speak to that. I mean, I
don't think it's Lisa, it's everyone's Lisa.
Oh, sorry. Hey, whoever, I'm happy to, you know, and I tell folks this all the time, that I'm happy to, you know, give you my phone number at First Step. I'm happy to help where I can to maybe kind of not only share my experience a little bit to make them comfortable, but I have a lot of resources out there. And so, and I know Chasity does and Jill does, and we're able to help kind of meet them where they're at. So if they're somewhere in Kansas City, Overland Park, wherever, I can give them a woman's phone number, a man's phone number in recovery that can help them.
You could connect them to resources.
Connect them, yeah, absolutely, yeah.
Yeah, and I'm close with the therapist here, and that's the same thing when they have a client and they're trying to, you know, relate or trying to help them with this, they'll contact me and, hey, can you reach out to this person? They're needing some help with this, or, you know, they're going through this. And, you know, the therapist here, they make my client load. They set me up with them. And it works out great, you know, and I meet with them, and if they don't want to continue peer support, they don't. Or if they do, you know, like I said, again, I wish I had it when I was in early recovery.
What's something that you learned as a peer mentor that you didn't expect to learn?
So for me, when I came in working at DECA as a peer support, the only thing I knew about medication-assisted treatment was methadone. I used with people that were using methadone. I've been with people at the methadone clinic, and I've seen, you know, in my opinion, I've seen people that were using it to get high. So then having clients that are in medication-assisted treatment, and I've went to a couple conferences and learned more about it. Now I'm all for medication-assisted treatment. You know, the Suboxone, the Vivitrol. And I have a couple of clients that I work with because they struggle with the outside community, recovery community, because they're on the MAP program. So I'm really grateful for that, because I was basically judging and having opinions about something that I didn't know enough about. So now I've learned about it, and it's really helped me in that sense.
Great. How about you or Jill? Carmen or Jill? Something that you learned but you didn't expect to learn?
I've learned that I have more of a voice than I thought I did, more confidence than I thought I did. Like when I'm in the ER and things, and I'm perfectly comfortable telling doctors, hey, this person really needs this Librium, you know, look at them, they're gonna have a seizure. And I didn't expect to be that comfortable, I guess. It's good.
Yeah.
Yeah, I love that, Jill. I was thinking about that too. Also, I think I'm working on like really, I can be a little too helpful at times because I want so much to just do everything. So I've learned that that's not always helpful. And I'm learning to really draw boundaries with clients in a way that, and it's just, I don't know, it's so cool. It's like I'm always learning a different way to communicate, a different way to, you know, and that has helped me a lot. So.
And Jillian, I liked what you said about the confidence, because I was the same way. When I first started doing the social detox, I shadowed Karma a couple of times. And I'm sure she can tell you when I walked in, I was just so quiet and like, like, what do I do here? Now I don't have the nurse go and take me in and introduce me. I just walk in, hi, I'm Chasity, you know, just, here we go, wake up, it's time to go. You know, setting those boundaries and stuff, and too, you know, learning when I need to go, okay, wait, they need to advocate for themselves.
Yes.
Yeah, whose work is it, right?
Right. And, you know, I have learned too, because of the couple of situations, you know, of helping them advocate when they're having their withdrawal symptoms and they're just not with it, you know, to where now I feel comfortable. I can walk up to a nurse and go, hey, they need Vivitrol. And I am very, you know, I don't know, I'm very a strong feeling about that, because I have had clients that were not given and, you know, had seizures and whatnot. Yeah. So I feel like it's our job to help make the transition easier for them, to get them going.
So I do have another question from the panelist is, do you maintain contact with clients after discharge? And then I imagine that they reach out to you, and how do you handle it?
I do. Some of my clients reach out to me. I had Ashley and my first client here, he would reach out to me after, you know, 60, 90, 120 days of sobriety. So it was really cool. Unfortunately, you know, I think he went back to drinking. I have several clients that will call me, let me know how they're doing. I just had a client who just got custody back of her baby, and she's on my virtual class. Oh, and she sent me pictures of her baby and her, and like, oh, it was just so touching to be able to see her, you know, talk about, I lost my baby and now she's getting visitation, and that is so cool. And I encourage that. I want them to call me and email me and feel like they can be open with me. So yeah.
Well, not even just to share the good stuff, right? Sometimes they call and say, hey, I need help. How, you know, and then our part is, how can we help them? Like where do they need the help?
Yeah.
I've had a few that have, I have the ones that I'll run into, and they're, you know, they're so excited and they tell me about what's going on. But I've had a few that have reached out to me, you know, during the struggle, and they know that I'm there. Or they're looking for a meeting, and, you know, so I direct them in where they need to go. I feel that that's a hard part for me, because I want to help anybody I can achieve, you know, long-term recovery. And so I have to learn that there's that line there. It's great that they want to reach out and tell us how they're doing or they need help, but we can't let ourselves get wrapped up, you know, stuck in that, like, you know, treating them like they're a sponsee or like we're working with them again. So we have to learn to find that boundary. I know I do.
I love that. I'm sorry to jump in. I just want to real quick say that I have a client who continuously calls me. He's been in the ED several times, and he continues to call me, usually when he's drunk, and he'll say, I just need your help. I just need your help. And while he doesn't take that, I just hope someday that that he will. At least he's calling, and maybe that doesn't seem like a big deal to a lot of people, but the fact that he's picking that phone up and calling, he's trying in the way that he can, you know? So anyway, sorry about that, Jill.
Well, we have about probably 6 minutes left, 7 minutes. And we continue, one theme that I continue to hear is we talk about boundaries. And why are boundaries so important, well, not just in treatment, but as a peer mentor?
Well, it helps you keep from getting burnt out. I mean, you don't want to be on call all, 24 hours a day. And I also think that it's not necessarily helpful to people some people, yeah, they reach out every once in a while, sure, they're in a crisis, but some people start to lean on that as a crutch. Like you're going to be the one who's always there for them. And I don't think that's helpful for their recovery in the long run. So that's what I would say.
I agree with you, Jill. When we went into the, working remotely and such, it basically kind of made myself more available for clients. And then I had to set the boundary when clients were texting me 11 and 12 o'clock at night, have to set that boundary. So, because they're new to it, they're coming in and, they have to learn how to follow rules and, the directions that are given to them. I'm glad that you feel that you can reach out to me, but like 12 o'clock at night is not okay. But also setting boundaries, like Jill said, I'm getting burnout. I did do that to myself because I have that problem saying no. And I was going to school and doing this and working full time and 3 nights a week detox. And so I have to set that boundary so that way I can protect myself, for my mental health, for my recovery, so I don't get burned out. And it's also good for the clients too, because it's teaching them how to set boundaries in other aspects of their life.
You're modeling for Did you have anything to say, Karma?
Yeah, I do. I was thinking that I didn't think about it then, but I know now that, the way that we are, we want what we want, right? And so especially in this environment, they don't like to be told no or later or whatever. So I think that that's a really, really useful lesson to learn in recovery, because you're rarely going to get what you want when you want it. That's just life. So why not teach those principles now so they can learn that when they get back out there? And that's hard for me because the clients are real, they're emotional. And so I've fed into that in the past, but I'm really learning, and that feels good. Feels good.
Well, I want to thank you guys for sharing your work, for sharing your heart, for sharing your recovery. I think it's so helpful for people to understand that while each of you are a peer mentor, you each do come at it differently and work in different spaces and offer different things. So do you have any final comments that you want to share before we end today? Not to put you on the spot or anything.
Well, thanks everybody for coming. Thanks for your questions. Really appreciate it. I'm really proud of our work. So if you have any questions, please let me, Jill, Chasity, Ashley know. We'd be happy to help.
Yeah. Thank you for coming and attending. And I'll see you guys in a few minutes.
Okay.
Okay, bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.